Okay, we are back to talk about Pluribus on Apple TV. This is episode 8, titled Charm Offensive. This episode written by Johnny Gomez and directed by Melissa Bernstein. After waking up in a hospital in Panama, Manusos forces his way out, but not before asking for an itemized receipt for how much his hospital stay and the use of an ambulance would cost. Still sick from the infection, he begins his long drive to Albuquerque. The others begin returning to the city, and Carol and Zoja spend the day together playing cards and croquet. Zoja then shows Carol the locations where they all sleep together to preserve resources, and Carol ends up staying the night with them. The next day, shows Carol through a telescope where the alien signal came from and how they are using the world's power to build a giant antenna so they can share the gift with other planets. After Carol and Zoja visit a diner the others rebuilt, where Carol used to come in and write in her early career, Carol panics. She tells Zoja she knows they're trying to distract her from undoing the joining. Zoja kisses her, and after initial hesitation, Carol and Zoja end up sleeping together. Carol resumes writing her fifth book the next day. Several days later, Zoja tells Carol that she's about to have a visitor, just as we see Manusos driving through Mexico, approaching the United States. A lot of times, a penultimate episode in a television show, particularly a show like this, will kind of pick you up and slam you to the ground, particularly in a Vince Gilligan show. This one I wouldn't say did that necessarily. We maybe learn a lot more about Carol and who she is and what she's trying to do. Sort of, I'm curious your initial reaction to this and sort of how you took this, particularly as a penultimate episode.
Yeah, I started thinking about the extent to which this is a character drama, this show, which is kind of odd because there are only like two characters.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I started thinking like maybe that's the lens to view it through more so than one that's overly focused on plot development and movement and all of that. I mean, of course, we have an interesting sci-fi premise. Um, but that's the big thing. I started thinking where maybe I'd been a little too focused on the plot and premise,
Mm.
where particularly with this episode, it was coming home to me that what's more interesting almost is thinking about Carol, her initial reaction, and then what's going on with her as a character through this episode. Does that make sense? What about you? How does this
Yeah,
one work for you?
it does, and I think this episode really drives home that point that, this could have been an episode where, you know, Carol is uncovers something and really gets closer to what, she can do to undo the joining, and Manusos shows up, and together they, hatch this plan, and then something that they weren't, it was unexpected, it gets in their way and just sort of sets up this big cliffhanger ahead of a finale, and instead we get this sort of dive into, well, we thought we knew a lot about Carol and the understanding of who she is, of what she's wanting and how she feels about these people, but yet that seems to evolve and move and change within this episode. It's a much quieter, sort of much subtler, but I mean, as you said, really gives us a deeper understanding of who Carol is, and I think does a good job of setting up who is she when Manusos arrives, right?
Yeah.
And what's the conflict there? I think that's going to be interesting.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, it would be one thing if Manusos had showed up a month ago, right?
Right.
But since then, Carol's shifted a bit through her loneliness, through her solitude, right, away from her position. I mean, but I don't think that's entirely the case. Let's try to parse this a little bit more, right? How do we read what's going on with Carol at this point? Because throughout this episode, she's decided she doesn't just want to be alone shooting fireworks in the direction of her face. Um, she wants to be around other people, in particular Zoja, who I think Carol's making an effort to convince herself of Zoja's individuality, which is something I want to talk about.
Yes,
Um,
yes, absolutely.
but at the same time, she's still working on her whiteboard in a way that indicates she still does want to figure out how to reverse the joining, right? So
Yes, yes.
thoughts about all of
This
that.
is sort of the real interesting duality to me in this episode that she seems to be very um, very committed to, very interested in Zoja for a lot of reasons. We've seen her talk about some of the sort of physical attraction that she feels towards Zoja. So there's that element. There's the element of she wants her to start using I and me so she can relate to her more individually. And then it seems like she just really enjoys her company, enjoys having her around and someone to talk to and someone to do things with. But she is not giving up keeping track of what's on the whiteboard and what she's trying to do, and the fact that she is able to always get back to the point where you're just trying to distract me because I'm trying to figure out some way to undo this. So yeah, this sort of balance of the two people she's trying to be, I thought was maybe the most interesting thing in this episode for me.
Yeah, agreed, because I feel like it's it's two things at once, even though they're in tension with one another, right?
Hmm.
Like the question you put on our show sheet notes was, is Carol warming to them or deceiving them, right? And I sort of think it's both,
Yeah, yeah,
you
I
know,
think so.
and that's what's kind of interesting. On the one hand, she wants company. She doesn't want to be alone. She also wants the acclaim. It's interesting. One thing I got to thinking about is how, as we've been talking about the show on the podcast, there's a way in which we've been ahead of it a little bit, which isn't meant as a criticism or anything like that. I don't know what it means. Um, but I was thinking about, I think it was last week, I said something even about how she wants that acclaim from her readers and so on. But with the others, it's meaningless, you
That's
know?
right. Yep.
Well, but then in this episode, she's at least kind of trying to convince herself it's not meaningless. But I also got thinking, like, maybe it isn't totally meaningless.
Yeah,
Um, here because she's writing something new.
that's
And
right.
and
Yeah.
I found this interesting to think about, right? That everyone in the others and their hive mind, they're collectively have like the knowledge of everyone in the world or whatever, right? Um, which sorry, this is almost an aside, but it does make me wonder how many books exist in the world that no one alive has read. I don't think
That's
the
a
answer is
good,
zero. Do
that's a
not
good
think the
question.
answer is zero. Um, but anyway, what's going on here? The fact that she's writing something that's new that they don't have access to until she gives it to Zoja. I think that maybe, that there is some kind of like genuine excitement on their part for
Yeah, in some ways, this is the most important thing in the world right now. This new work, original work, individual work that's being created that they will at all at once collectively be able to consume once she finishes it. It's I mean when you're in the I mean this is not exactly the most appropriate analogy, but when you're in the desert, any water you come across is going to be helpful to you, right? Anything is going to be perfect, exactly what you need. And these people just, I don't know that they're necessarily seeking it or desiring it, but it's a sense of it is impossible for things like this to be created and for things like this to be produced. And this is the one individual in the world, it seems like, who can do it. So it does then become inherently the most important thing that's being done in the world right now.
yeah. And so this is where I think it's very easy to read it as a critique of AI or large language
Right.
models, chat GPT, all of that kind of stuff, because it's sort of um the thought would be precisely that what you can't get there is true novelty, right?
Mm.
From my understanding of how the things work and so on and so forth, it's almost definitional, that
Yeah.
it's predicting what words most likely to come next and all that kind of stuff, right? Um, so I found this funny to think about that they intentionally made Carol an author, but she's not really a good author. You know what I mean? Like she's not really writing meaningful literature or whatever,
Right.
right? Um, she's writing this romanticy
Mhm.
stuff, right? which I think the show has kind of intentionally indicated, yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
It's like
But
some people really like it, fine, but
yeah,
it's
so
not like,
she's writing things that people love, that a lot of people love, and it is, I think, just sort of this commentary on any individual creative artistic work, no matter what level it is going to be more meaningful or important or beautiful than something that, is artificially created or something that technology creates.
yeah, that's where I was going with this, to tie it all
Yeah.
together. Yeah,
Yeah.
here now we are kind of landing that thought that um even the stuff written by a human being that isn't terribly good is still like way more valuable than whatever kind of slop the
Exactly.
AI might
Exactly.
produce. So I think that's definitely a play, and there's some humor to it.
Yeah,
Carol,
I'll say we do get the reference to I mean, this is a very direct reference to her saying that she's like she's playing cards with Google, that she's got this very just sort of um not surface level, but this sense of I can't do anything or say anything you don't know. I can't say anything that you don't have commentary or knowledge about, or a strategy that I can come up with that you're not familiar with. So yeah, just sort of this sense of I just found this all very ironic in a week. I don't know if you saw this news about this lady in Asia who married a Chat GPT AI partner. It's just sort of this, how far off the cliff are we going here? So the more I think about it, the more I think about this as in some capacity a commentary on all of that.
yeah, but then also I really did enjoy how this episode had multiple moments. Um, I don't know how to describe them now off the cuff. They hang together in my mind. But playing with that a little bit, right? So, do the others have like all the knowledge in the world and so on? Yes, but when it comes to playing a game, so this is another thing where it was like, oh, I feel like I already said things when they were playing, quote unquote, playing poker in Vegas a couple weeks ago,
Yeah, yeah.
but they explored a bit more here. So, what kind of game can you actually play, right? Something like a trivia game, non-starter,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
And I think same goes with like something like Scrabble. You could probably do, but you're just going to lose
You're
because
gonna
you're
lose.
like,
They know every combination of letters into words that would just dominate you.
and I think that's the same problem with chess, right? Which is funny because I think I actually mentioned that we were talking about the poker game a couple weeks ago. Like maybe you could play chess with them. But if you think it through, yeah, you could play chess with Zoja, but it would be like playing chess with Kasparov or something, right?
That's
You're gonna lose.
all the grandmasters combined. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like what was the computer, Big Blue?
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
basically the computers that play chess now have gotten so good you functionally cannot beat them, you know.
Correct.
So what do they play? Spit. You ever play that game? You familiar with this card game that they're playing?
Yes, we played this in high school, I want to say.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember the rules as they played it. I know that I have. Yes, I'm pretty sure I've played Spit before.
Same, yeah. And it's like, unfortunately, I'm not sure if I remember all of the rules precisely, and there might be variance. But anyway, it is like it does have more of an element of chance. So this is what I recall. Like you're flipping
Yeah.
over cards, right? And then however it works exactly, maybe it's when the cards are the same number or whatever, you be the first one to notice and like slap it, and then you take the cards, and then I think the goal
Yeah.
is to take all of the
Yes.
cards. So they can play a game like this. They're in this sort of space of play. Another moment is when Carol mentions how she loves the sound of trains,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
Zoji
thought that was
didn't know
interesting.
that.
Right. Never told anyone that before.
So they play with these little spaces where it is meaningful. I think you know even something that is sort of small, like talking about how the sound of the train horn makes you
Yeah.
feel. What did she call it? Like the loneliest sound in the world or
Yeah, the
something?
loneliest sound in the world. Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of landed for me. Um, but yeah, that okay, well, she hadn't told anyone that before. So again,
Right.
we're kind of playing with the extent to which there is some space for novelty and how that's tied up with a meaning or something. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then I mean, how do we read? Because there's a romance, as it were. I mean, if that's the right term. Um, thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think interesting that it comes in the midst of Carol having this breakdown about being distracted. And so clearly this is just another distraction on one sense, but also appeals clearly to what we know Carol thinks about her physically and romantically. It also appeals to what apparently is growing inside Carol, this desire to have some kind of closeness with someone. It may not be many people. She seems like someone who, needs a partner, needs a companion, and maybe not much else. And she's finding that in Zoja. And so on one hand, you can look at it that way, but I see it as, yeah, we are going to try to distract you and keep you happy and away from the thing that would take us away from what we're trying to do. And I'm trying to think, is there a way that Carol is manipulating Zoja in this situation or trying to take advantage of her? I'm not really sure what, where I've landed there.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if I quite think it's that.
Yeah.
It's on the one hand, it is along the lines of sleeping with Chat GPT. That's Alan Sepinwall called it that.
Yeah, in
Or
his recap, he just, said, well, she
um,
played cards with Google and then went on sleeping with ChatGPT. Yeah.
so on the one hand, I definitely think it is that, but then there's the stuff that we were just talking about, or I was just pointing to, right? That
Yeah.
there are these little indications, Also, when they're getting a massage or whatever, there's a discussion that got me thinking, okay, well, each of the others is distinct physically, but
Yep.
not mentally, you know.
Yep.
So it's not like they're all enjoying that massage. It means like just this distinct body. There's a way in which there is a question here where I feel like something like this line about sleeping with Chat GPT risks being a little too reductive.
Yeah.
So it's like on the one hand, it seems mostly like Carol's trying to convince herself that Zoja is a distinct individual. But to what extent is she a distinct individual, even if her tendency is to speak as we and so on and so forth, right? It's like at
Right. I
one
like what
level, go ahead, sorry.
I say I like what you're saying about the idea of connecting it to the massages, that there are certain experiences, feelings, um, just a sense of you can know about it, you can learn about it, but you can't experience it. And I presume this companionship or this sexual relationship that they have is something that only two of them can share in terms of the gratification of it, whereas everybody else just knows that it's happening, but they can't necessarily experience it like Zoja can.
Right. So there's I think there is that wrinkle where it's a little bit different than having sex with a computer, you know?
Yeah.
Like these others still are human, and that's an interesting thing for the show to explore further. At the same time, like, can it be genuine? I don't know, right? I mean,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
we asked this question before too with Kumba, um, presuming he's having sex with those attractive women. the question about consent, right? Where it's kind
Yes.
of like,
Yes.
well, they're sort of doing it of their own free will. You know what I mean? To what extent do they have free will, even, right? To what extent do they
Yeah.
have that like kind of autonomy?
And
Um,
it's
is a
very
question.
purposeful that it's Zoja making the move here, right? That it's not, yeah, obviously if Carol had started it, Zoja would just go along to make her happy and whatever you want. But then there's this sense of, yeah, just really torn between this. This is what I slash we feel versus what we think you need slash a distraction that were to keep you away from, some of the things we don't want you doing. And so like it's got to be some of all of that.
Yeah, how do we throughout they have wanted to do whatever they can to make her happy, give her most favoritist meal ever, all of that kind of stuff. So I think there's always been that kind of question about their motivations. Can you read that as like genuine affection or whatever?
Yeah.
I do think
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right that it's important that Zsuzsa is the one who makes the first move
Yes.
in terms of them ultimately sleeping together and so on. But then that's just leading to this other question: how do we read all of that, everything that they're trying to do to please her,
Hmm.
um, and why? You know, um, maybe along those lines, talk about the diner a little bit that
Oh
they
yeah. Okay.
apparently completely reconstructed because it had previously burned down. Thoughts on this? Apparently, this is where, when she was getting started, Kara would go to work to write, and her favorite diner. And then I guess ultimately it burned down, and that was the
Yeah.
end of the diner. But they've
We
totally
talked,
reconstructed it.
I think it was 2 episodes ago, we talked about emotional intelligence and how the others lack this and just think that if we give you something that you love or that you used to have, you'll be grateful and you will just have nothing but just warm feelings about this. Um, and clearly they missed the mark again here with this. Something that was so unique and special and personal to Carol to be recreated when it was literally gone, both person gone and building gone. It's these things that they keep doing that keep tethering Carol back this idea of okay, I'm the one who has to save the world from this because this is just too far away from reality. We may have world peace, we may not have violence, we may have no property, and everyone is happy, but these things that are so unique and personal and individual, we have to preserve those. And you've just done just sort of a recreation of it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, it kind of works for her at first for a bit
Yeah,
until
yeah,
she thinks it through or something.
yep, I think
And
so.
I guess my biggest thought was that it's just too much, you know, of going to the lengths of completely rebuilding this diner I used to go to before it burned down
Yeah,
and bringing in the waitress. I think that's almost the tipping point when she realizes, like, at first I felt like she was willing to go along and enjoy it, and the nostalgia of that diner.
yeah,
But realizing, I think what you were pointing to, I don't know, what kind of irreality of it, that
yeah,
you've recreated it down to the detail, even to the point where you've brought this woman back who used to be my
yes,
server here on a regular basis, but she'd moved on with her life, she'd moved somewhere else, and so on and so forth, right? And so that then now it's bringing home to Carol again this feeling that she no longer exists, right?
yeah.
Like the distinctive human personalities have been erased, and that's part of her freak out, I think.
And I think Carol does think a lot about consent as well. This Bree, the waitress diner, I think for all intents and purposes, did not consent to leave Miami and come to this location and become a server there again. She was hive-minded into it, right? It's what she is required to do. It's what they need of her. And so, yeah, this is taking this person's life and how they moved on and how they were forced to do something else and essentially forcing them to come back. I think that's just one more straw that Carol was unwilling to take.
Right, which I mean, but her perspective on it makes sense, right? It's similar to, and maybe we can use this as a segue to talk a bit more about Benusos, what we get in this episode of him, the way he reacts to his mother, right?
Yes.
You're not my mother, right?
That's right.
Because all of these people have been subsumed in this collective hive mind of the others, right?
Yep.
Um, what was Zoja like before the joining? We don't really know, but I'd hazard a guess she wasn't like this. She's
Oh,
probably way
absolutely.
different.
There's no way. I mean, she has been curated to look like and have a personality of someone that would be able to be attractive and a companion for Carol. So yeah, absolutely, she's different.
Yeah. What's interesting to me though is how there's no, at least to our knowledge at this point, there's no like puppet master behind the scenes, pulling the strings. And I kind of don't think there will be.
Yeah,
It's everyone has been subsumed into this collective. So there is a level at which they are doing what they want to do
yeah,
freely. Uh, you know, um, yeah, the plan is to set up this diner, and then in order for that to work, the woman who used to wait tables there is going to go across the country or whatever.
yeah,
But she wants to. They want to. We. This is what we want to do for Carol, right? Everyone together, So, but subsuming everyone into that kind of collective will to this radical degree through the
yeah,
science fiction premise, it kind of erases the idea of free will, at least at the individual level, right? But yeah, I
yeah,
don't know. Anyway,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's
It's so funny how this. I think about Severance this way too. It's a relatively relatively simple concept. Everyone thinks and acts the same. Everyone is like-minded. Severance is, you're one way here, another way there. But just
Mhm.
how many layers of depth of the complexity of things that you have to consider when you think about these ideas and what it would do to affect us. I think this is just another great show that does that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they've been doing a really good job of staying true to the premise and exploring it. Zoja shows Carol the source of the signal and also
Yeah.
shares that their plan is to set up a big antenna to send the signal out. Okay. Note that over here, I guess, like something that might come back around. But I wanted to take to Manuzos and think about his disposition is still entirely
Mm.
and maybe even more firmly that these people are nice zombies. These people are not the people that they used to be. I need to save the world. We need to save the world, right? Something needs to be done to undo this. Um, to the level where we've talked about him leaving money for the gas he was siphoning out of people's cars and so on. And
Mhm.
as we somewhat predicted, he wakes up in the hospital this week in Panama and immediately like, I'm getting out of here. Um, asking for a bill and so on, it's maybe a little bit extreme, but I think it's all serving to drive this point home that he is not willing to go along at all, you know. So
Yeah.
if I would have owed you money prior to the joining, I still want to pay you that money, or I want to take on that debt because that's how the world is supposed to be, something like that.
Yeah. But I think Manusos, we'll see what happens when he gets to Albuquerque, but he has entered into a state of he does seem very rigid and firm in his beliefs and in his and what he is refusing to budge on. But he's also entered into, I think, a state of convenience. Like, okay, I'm going to sign a piece of paper saying I owe you this. He seems like the type of person who would be good to pay it back. It seems like he doesn't want anyone to be without or to be into debt to anyone. But much like we've talked about the others doing things that may or may not be in opposition to their biological imperative, Manusos has to free the world from this, even if it means, okay, I'll just write on a piece of paper that I owe you $9,000 or whatever whenever I can. I don't think that takes out to be too much, but it just shows that he is he's going to stop at nothing to try to find Carol and end this thing.
Yeah. And, in some ways, I felt like the scene in the hospital and so on was too brief, or maybe I wanted more last week, which we talked about last week, how I kind of wanted a little bit more when they were rescuing him
Yep.
from the
Yep.
Darien Gap. But that's okay. I mean, I think it works well
Yeah.
enough. It just
Yeah.
seemed,
It's clear we're not going to get that. We're not going to get his reaction, his story. He passed out. He woke up some days later. As soon as he had the strength to stand, he forced his way out of there. I mean, it just what we know. They flew him over the gap, and he took an ambulance. I mean, that's what we get, and I mean, it seems reasonable.
right. And they are driving home the way in which he has that disposition of not being willing to take their help, really.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, it's like he accepted the emergency medical treatment a little bit, which,
Mhm.
okay, but he didn't have a choice. I don't know
Yeah.
if I wanted him to be madder about that or what. They just don't really explore
Yeah.
it. Takes the ambulance, treating himself. He's on his way to New Mexico. So it's interesting because I feel like so next week in the season finale, he's going to get there.
Yeah.
Um, Manusos and Carol are finally going to meet. But whereas she's shifted a bit over the course of time, he hasn't at all.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, I think that she was closer to where he is in terms of a way of thinking when the season started, right?
That's absolutely correct. I mean, anything he's dug in his convictions even more, whereas Carol is, I mean, literally sleeping with the enemy, as it were.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, it seems pretty clear where this is going. I am mildly disappointed that season one doesn't seem likely to go much further than this because Carol and Manusos aren't going to meet until the season finale. What else
Yeah.
happens, I don't know, but it definitely seems like it's being set up as this kind of choice for Carol between going along with the others, taking what happiness she can
Yep.
from her relationship with Zoja and so on, versus teaming up with Manusos to do whatever they can to save the world, right? It seems like that's
Yeah.
clearly how things are going to come to a head.
Yeah. Yeah. That's this well, not confrontation, but this meeting and what they are learning and trying to convince each other to do or ways to approach this. Um, yeah, I'm curious how far we get into that conversation and if there's a plan developed or hatched and they start moving down the path towards something. I think it's going to be more about these two people learning really about who the other one is. We're thinking more about this being a little bit more of a character study than a science fiction look at all the action. I think we're going to just, yeah, see this meeting as not what it would have been if he had said made it to Albuquerque on day one of Carol's isolation without them.
Right. Yeah. And we have the episode title. It's out there. It's public. It's on the Apple TV site. And I think that this just indicates, I mean, at least it indicates a lot to me about what to expect from the season finale. That it's
Yeah.
called La Chica o El Mundo. Sorry, I read Spanish a little better than I speak it. But so are you going to choose the girl or the world.
Yeah.
Zoja or the world. You know,
Yep.
it seems pretty clear to me in terms of interpreting the setup for the season finale. So, um, all right, good. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up here?
Think that about covers it.
Okay, same. All right. Well, next week we will be back for the Pluribus season one finale. Uh, we're not sure exactly when yet. It looks like they are going to release it a couple days early on the night of the 23rd. So do we manage to find time to record on Christmas Eve or something? We'll see. If not, it might not be
Yeah.
until the following weekend. But subscribe to the podcast and all of that, and yeah, you should get a notification. Thanks always for listening. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a good rating, review, all that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, thumbs up, whatever. You can follow the site on social media. Search for TV Obsessive. You should find us. And as always, encourage you to go to tvobsessive.com, walk around, read written work on TV, past and present. And we'll be back with you next week talking about Pluribus.
All right. Happy holidays and see you next time.